Judge, obviously you sat through this trial and heard the entirety of the evidence in this case. This is not a jury that struggled. They never once indicated that they could not reach a decision. They barely took 2 hours to find the defendant guilty of all charges, including malice murder. The evidence was overwhelming, and the jury was very comfortable in finding that malice. I want to address one thing, and I know it's an uncomfortable thing for everybody to address, but the state and my office has never once made this case about race, not one time. We did not ask a single question in jury selection that would be considered race baiting. We did not say anything about race throughout this trial. We just have a community that we represent that needs peace and needs healing, and has needed that peace and needed that healing over and over and over again, whether it's aimed at this defendant or not. So whether or not we would be in this same place if Mr. Herring looked different, that's something only the defendant in her heart can speak to. But we have not made this case about race. But we do want this case to be about Mr. Herring and this defendant. Mr. Herring was a human worthy of saving. He had a family to go home to. And what he wanted and his wishes and his rights were fully disregarded by this defendant on May the 7th of 2019. We've talked about the witnesses, and I respect their opinion. I know they've known the defendant for a long time, but I want this court to consider what you've really heard about the real Hannah Payne. Her demeanor in this courtroom, her demeanor during her cross-examination, where she was as disrespectful as she could be, only remembered answers to her lawyer's questions. Her demeanor and who the real Hannah Payne is was heard in that 911 call, when she decided that she's smarter and righter than everyone else. She was told repeatedly, even though she's been, in my opinion, dishonest about it, she was told repeatedly and understood clearly to leave Mr. Herring alone. The real Hannah Payne is the one screaming on that call for him to get out of the car and cursing at him and striking him, as every state's witness who witnessed that incident told you about. The one who introduced a gun into a situation that had nothing to do with her, and then has continued to fail to accept any responsibility for her actions whatsoever by trying to claim that Mr. Herring shot himself, when the evidence is clear that that's not what happened, and honestly not really possible. She has yet to tell a consistent story about what happened. Every time she told the story in her interview, it changed. It was different here. It was different in the back of the patrol car, because she accepts no responsibility for her own actions. The real Hannah Payne is the one cursing, telling him to get the F out of the car. And when she gets back on the phone with 911, explaining that she shot him because he hit her Jeep. He hit her car. The real Hannah Payne is the person who said, "I'm safe, but he ain't." That's the malice that the jury heard, and what they had no problem finding beyond a reasonable doubt that was in this defendant's heart when she took the life of a big brother who gave all his siblings nicknames and made jokes with them and took care of them and put himself on the mountain to take care of his whole family. We do not believe, Judge, that this is a case where the minimum sentence is appropriate based on all of these factors. There has not yet been a tear for this victim. Her tears are for herself. You have the authority in count 1 to sentence the defendant to life without parole as requested by the family. And we would ask that you consider their request and leave the choice as to whether or not the life is with or without parole in the discretion of this court. However, on the false imprisonment, if this court does choose to give this defendant life with the possibility of parole, it is the state's request that the 10 years on that false imprisonment run consecutive on count 5. And then on count 6, you are required to give a consecutive 5-year sentence. And we would ask that it run consecutive to the false imprisonment for a sentence of life plus a consecutive 15 years. We will leave it within this court's discretion as to whether or not you think this defendant deserves a sentence of life with or without parole, but we would ask that you consider the statements made by the family in this case and the things that you have heard in this trial and the malice in this defendant's heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Assistance.